Hey, Facebook. It's nice to see you. The Facebook world's watching us. I'm so excited to be here chatting with my dear friend, my dear colleague. We actually have never met in person, but have been in a lot of similar conversations. Sarita, Linda, excited to Rocco? Be here chatting with my dear friend, my dear colleague. We actually have never met in person, but have been in a lot of echo of your similar conversations. Sarita, Linda, excited. Okay.
Wow. Whoa,
So,
we're echoing.
We're echoing, exactly, which I bet is something that we can end up talking about in terms of like ancestral healing in a couple of moments.
Kind of an omen.
Exactly. But anyways, so for anyone who is watching the recording, anyone who's watching live, I just want to welcome you. Once again, my name is Patrick. I'm here chatting with Sarita today. And basically the reason for this conversation is because I have a retreat coming up. I'm hosting my first ever live in-person retreat in New York City, greatest city in the world. First weekend of June. It's going to be June 3rd to the 5th. And really what this retreat is about, it's kind of like an in-person opportunity for my year-long coaching program that's called Journey to You to come together in person, not just with Journey to You members, but just open this up to anybody else who's interested in doing some of this self-inquiry work, this answering this question of like, who am I? and yeah, exactly. And really, like one of the reasons I reached out to Sarita to actually come see if she'd be interested in hosting a workshop at the retreat, which she is, I'm super excited, is because it just has become super apparent to me that I can't really get very far in answering this question, who I am, if I don't look at like where I came from and what came before me. So just a little bit on what you can expect at this retreat. Of course, there's going to be Sarita's amazing ancestral healing workshop, but the workshops that I'm going to be leading are three kind of specific workshops. One that focuses on your values, the second one that focuses on your purpose, and the third one that focuses on your vision. And so I do want to get into with Sarita, like how ancestral healing can be in service of all of those things. But maybe we can start the conversation off by me just asking you this first question, Sarita, of like, what is an ancestor?
It's a really big question. I just have to say, okay, I don't live in New York City. I live in West Reading, Pennsylvania. So for me to drive 45 minutes, get on a train, take a train to New York, hop on a cab, and do all that, it must be important.
Oh.
This is like so important.
Yeah.
This is one of the most important conversations because there's actually, we were talking before we came on, your ancestor isn't just your grandmother, not to minimize your grandmother, but your ancestry is way bigger. And it really branches into like the entire conversation that we have about everything that we do in Yoga Healer and in what you do in your work. There's really 4 parts to ancestry.
Okay.
So the first one is, and these will be the things I'll discuss when we're there, in addition to offering some types of practices that you can do to deepen your understanding. But the first is your DNA. So you think about your DNA as your blood, like your blood ancestry. We all know that, right? But it goes beyond your blood ancestry to, it also includes your microbiome.
Wow. Which we're deep in the microbiome conversation with Kate in the Yoga Healer community, which is so awesome.
Totally. So like, we're a composite, we're human, maybe 300,000 years old.
Yeah.
But how much of us are microbiome? Like 4 billion years old, billions of years. So our microbiome is part of our ancestry. And our microbiomes are individual, they're different, we all have a unique expression of microbiome. So it has to do with the microbiome connects us to environment. So our environment is also our ancestor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's an aspect of understanding how that's all connected, which I often will say, Ayurveda is the explanation of how we're one.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
we can say we are one,
right.
namaste, we are one, but you know, it's really the understanding of how we're one. So when it comes to ancestral healing, you can't have ancestral healing without understanding to what degree that oneness goes, to what degree we owe a bow.
Wow.
Okay. So
Okay.
that's the first, is like your DNA and understanding you're a composite, your physical, you know, you have the human aspect of yourself, but you have also, you know, the microbiome.
Yeah.
That's like, all that one's a showstopper right away.
I'm
You're like,
trying to like digest it, just what you just said. It's like really, it really kind of is.
yeah,
Because I think this
yeah.
whole awareness of microbiome and how, I mean, Kate talks a lot about this, how microbiome is one of the greatest indicators of health right now. This is kind of emergent and this is new for a lot of people. And one of the things you and I were just
Yes.
chatting about before we got on was like ancestral healing isn't necessarily on a lot of people's radars in
Mm-mm.
Western culture or in this country, at least. I know it wasn't
Yeah.
really on my radar before I heard the podcast that you did with Kate. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I must know more about this because
yeah.
it
Yeah,
just
because
seems so
once
relevant.
somebody wakes it up, you're like, oh my God, that really does matter. That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
And I love that
it's
concept of waking up because it's not like it wasn't there, but it was almost like it was just sort of, it was laying there. Maybe the light of consciousness hasn't yet had the chance to sort
mm-hmm,
of direct its attention
mm-hmm.
there. But I think there's something so poignant about that waking up.
Yeah.
Okay, and I didn't mean to get us sidetracked.
No,
You
that's okay. It's
Four
because
aspects.
that
You
one's
just gave
like
us the first. Well, and just
the
talk for
brain blowing up emoji on that one, you know,
yeah, for
with
one more, like
microbiome.
this idea of composite. What do you mean when you say we're a composite? Like, what does that
Well,
mean?
you know, we're a combination of human and bugs and
Yeah.
all the other things, you know. We're actually more of that, you know.
I like that
So
it
we,
sort of we're more than we think we are, which is
yeah,
this beautiful metaphor in there, but like we literally are more than we think we are when you put it
way.
in terms.
And it expands your, I believe, ancestral healing. I've seen it too over all the years, which is why I took such an interest in it. Once I became aware of it. I didn't know about it either. I was blessed to understand it from my teacher, and then I was like hooked. I was like, oh my gosh, everybody has to know about this. This is just so powerful. Um, you know, because it expanded my awareness of of like who I really am, like
Yeah.
how far reaching my actions really are, and
Hmm.
my intentions for the good of the whole,
Hmm.
you know, and how far reaching that really is, and how that supports my own goals, my own moving forward.
Hmm.
I mean, without it, you're kind of like, you know, it's like being on your own. You have all this support available that you can create through the understanding of where you came from. So your intuition is spot on. Like, how can you even pursue this without knowing where you came from?
Not knowing. Yeah. And as you're
Spot
saying,
on.
the word that's coming to my mind is just like expanse,
Yeah.
expansion, expansion, expansion. Um,
Total expansion.
so that's so cool. All right. Okay. Give
So
us
that's number one.
two.
That's only number one. That's number one. And, and then number two is, you know, you have family, of course, but we all understand that, you know, family, the blood, you know, yes, we have these blood connections, but if you ever notice, our karmic connections with our family aren't always super close. You know, sometimes families split up, people go their own way, you know. So you have also karmic connections with people.
Okay.
So your family is also your karmic family, people that, you know, you have a strong connection with,
Hmm.
that may not be your blood, may be your blood, but it may not be your blood. So that's also part of ancestry.
It's okay. So for anyone who's listening who thinks maybe that karma is just kind of like, let me do something good now so that more goodness comes to me in the future, how would you kind of dispel that like notion? Because like there's another way that we could talk about karma that
Uh,
really is like cause and
yeah.
effect, right? That there's almost like a physics in a way. And so the
Well, it's like a magnet. It's like who's in
mm,
your field? Who ends up in your field? No matter how you try, they still sort of end up there. There are people that are in your life. They're not your blood relatives, but they're like significant.
yeah,
It might be a teacher, it might be a friend, like
yeah,
somebody who you're just so close to, in your life, that you would, if that friend passed on, there's still a connection. There's a connection that gets formed energetically with people.
yeah. I
That's
just
how
love
I
that
guess.
idea of like a magnetic connection in the way
Mm,
that we think about like this karmic family. Because
yeah.
yeah, that totally resonates. I'm thinking of just a few specific individuals, both, that I'm related to by blood and not, but that
Hmm.
connection just feels so, I mean, almost tangible, right? Like,
Yeah, it's even like your life partner. You're not
sure.
connected to your life partner by blood, but you become connected by commitment, relationship, all the other things that connect people. So
Mm,
family goes beyond, necessarily just, it would be so narrow to think it's only just your blood relatives. Of course, as you live your life, you become connected deeply and significantly to a lot of different people.
sure, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the concept of karma is very interesting to me, and I guess one of the reasons I brought that up is just because like I had my understanding of karma deepened when I started studying the sutras, really, the Yoga Sutras.
Mm.
And it was like it's much more about what you're saying, that like this karma, it's not something that I can really ignore, but almost something that I was going to say have to reckon with, but also get to. Like it's something that I get to engage with in terms of these relationships.
Yeah. And you either do it with like awarefully, or when you ignore it, it can be a negative connotation, that a thread that you haven't dealt with, and you can't figure out why does this keep coming around, or what's happening here. So it's in a way, it's like, it's just it's awareness. It's just more awareness of connection and resolving conflict within yourself sometimes. So when you look at like ancestral, resolutions, it's really all about resolutions.
Hmm.
It's all about resolving. And how it is, like, it's really important to bring things to closure.
Yeah.
Your beginning, the middle, the end. Ancestral healing is like, it's like a type of closure that's a good for a whole, that lets everything keep moving, so there's no stuck.
Right. Because basically the cycles have been started or opened. And I
Mhm.
guess one of the things that I'm kind of understanding more about ancestral healing is like actually allowing the cycle to reach completion. And
Yeah.
God, like sometimes it's emotional too, or maybe
Yeah.
always. It's
Yeah, it can be. Well, it's emotional because it's true.
mm,
You know
mm.
how truth is like this, ah, and then it can bring tears, because you're like, it's so true. And yeah,
Yeah, I
the
think
truth.
about that a lot. In my former life, I was an actor. Like my former life before I became like a yoga health coach and everything. I may have been an actor in other past lives as well. But like I'm thinking to all the shows that we would put on, and how, inevitably closing night rolls around and everyone's just like tears in
Mm,
everyone's eyes. We get to do this one last time. We go out, we take one last bow. And of course our hearts are breaking,
yeah,
but we also know that this has to end. And
yeah,
this came up in a call I was on the other day. It's like really beautiful when something ends, we actually now have space for something new to come in. And that I
yes,
imagine is a big benefit of some of this work.
yes, absolutely.
Cool, cool. All right, are you ready to give us number three?
Number three. Okay, number three is cultural.
Mm,
So number three is like your language, the country of your origin, because especially in our country, we're not all just from our country. There's your religion. So
mm,
you have karmic threads that go through all that. Where you might have some duty toward um, your culture, you
Mm,
know, and some connections that are very deep that are just simply cultural connections,
yeah. You mentioned
right?
you mentioned duty, and I mean there is a little bit of a kind of dharma comes up in this idea of like
Mm.
duty or even purpose, and that's one of these three elements that I'm going to be focusing on the retreat is like what our purpose is. And to just make a quick connection back to something of karma, this one line stuck out to me from one of my favorite translations and commentaries on the sutras is by Alan Finger of Ishta Yoga,
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
he's called Tantra of the Yoga Sutras, and it's when he's talking about santosha, which is
mm.
contentment. And I'd always heard of contentment in the past as like, or I thought about it as like, okay, I'm just chill with everything exactly as it is. Nothing needs to change. And this definition really broadened my understanding of contentment. He says that, santosha is being content with one's karma and dharma. And so it's
Oh,
acceptance of what is. And that way, when you recognize a challenge and accept it as your karma, you can stop struggling with it and live alignment with your dharma.
I
So
love that way of describing it. Yes.
it's interesting, right? And
It's
I
like
think,
saying yes to your life.
oh yeah, oh yeah,
It's like saying yes to whatever your life is and not being like, oh, my life sucks and this person's life is better. It's like, no, my life, this is my life, my karma, my ancestors, this is, yeah,
yeah.
it's
It's
embracing
one
it.
of the one of the first rules of improvisational acting is like yes and like
Yeah.
don't say no to a suggestion that's thrown at you. You know what I mean? Just sort of say yes with
Hmm.
it and run with
Hmm.
it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we've got first this idea that we are a composite. We are
We're composite.
more than we think we are. The
Hmm.
second is that our ancestral nature, I guess, shows up in terms of our, you call it karmic relationships?
Yeah, like expanded relationships beyond the blood. Like the
Okay.
DNA is the blood, what we typically think of as our blood, which
Mm,
also extends into the biome.
mm,
But, our blood relatives, and then the karmic, the extended family,
okay.
people we choose, the family we choose,
Family we
or
choose.
that chooses us,
Yeah. And
that
then
we're
we went,
connected to.
and then we went cultural.
Hmm. And then
Okay.
cultural expands way deeper because cultural takes it into some things that are very on the plate in our country right now, which is the pain and suffering of the people that came before us that are not our blood family, but the pain and suffering of other people that have, like the different races and the suffrage
Yeah.
that comes before us. So we also have a, a duty or a way that we can reconcile some of the actions of our ancestors and some of the pain that has been caused in the people that have come before us.
No,
Slavery and all the other things that are on the plate fall into this cultural category of expanding responsibility. I don't want to get into it too much here, but it's a definite element
no,
of,
you said that word responsibility, and that was kind of the one that
yeah.
was right on the tip of my tongue. That there is an element of responsibility here, and like it's in service of my evolution, and I also feel like what's in service of my evolution is in service of evolution as a whole too, like the
Hmm.
collective
Yes.
evolution. And if I can't really take ownership of those elements that came before me, I'm not
Yes.
going to allow myself to move forward. Did you ever, another thing that Kate turned me on to was like integral evolutionary theory? Did you ever get into
Oh.
any of that with like
Mm-mm.
Ken Wilber? And because
Mm-mm.
Kate will draw that evolutionary spiral a lot, right?
Oh.
And she
Mm.
talks about this concept, how that which came before us, we've transcended it, that's clear, but like it's transcend and include. So we don't kind of just chuck it out and say that this
No.
is no longer us, but it's like, and actually the way that the spiral goes, since it builds outward, those things that came before are actually closer to the center, closer to the foundation. And so if there's sort of things that need to go back and get like those cycles need to be closed, the way that I'm sort of
Yes.
visualizing that is it's strengthening the foundation, strengthening the core of who we are.
Oh my gosh. And if we don't resolve that stuff within ourselves, it's still active. Like we
Hmm.
could still behave unbeknownst to us. We might not think we are, but we can still be behaving with those same karmas coming through us, if you understand what I mean. So it's basically reconciling all the natives that died before us, and in some of the ways that that's occurred in our country. That's part of that's part of the expanded view, and it explains really, a lot of what's happening right now, and a lot of the uprisings that there are, because that needs to be reconciled. It's not about beating ourselves up. It's not about, oh,
Right.
we're bad. It's totally not about that. It's just about awareness and recognizing that happened, and acknowledgement, and working with deeper than the surface, deeper than the physical. It's working in an astral plane on
Yeah.
that, and
Yeah.
it makes a difference. It makes a huge difference.
Well, and I imagine you're speaking from like lived experience too. Like you've felt the difference. And I do want to, I mean, I'll
Oh,
let you get to principle number 4 first, or I could, but I want to come back and just ask you also a little bit about like how have you seen some of this change impacting you? Like how has this worked? Yeah, yeah.
it's a huge, huge question, that how can I say succinctly?
Mm,
Um, my mom died when I was pretty young. I was in my early 20s, and it was a really shocking thing for me. And it prompted a question like, what is health? What is living about? Like, it just started this inquiry. And I had a really hard time just accepting her passing. And so it impacted me. It like watermarked me, if you know
mm,
what I mean. Like, it just, like, a lot was just going on that was unresolved for me. And when I began doing the ancestral work, when I had met my teacher, and, you know, understood about the ancestral work, and had done many, many, many ancestral healing things along the way in those years in helping my teacher, um, I was able to not just come to terms with that passing, but it expanded my understanding truly of what my inquiry became from that death, which is what is real health, and really catapulted me into everything I do today. So it was like, my teacher used to say, if you don't reconcile like the ancestral karmas, you know, then if when you do, you stand on their shoulders and you go to your next level of whatever it is that you're supposed to do. And when it's not recognized, you're just sort of, always stuck, and just, it's harder to move to the next dharma. So it's about dharma. It's about, it liberated me not just to reconcile, not just to be done with grieving. It's not about that. It's more about understanding even why it all happened, and how it serves me and continues to serve me. It's not as if, the death is something that we've all died,
yeah.
and we all live. And so it's understanding cycle of life, and moving through the cycle of life consciously. Um, we've all died,
We've all died.
and we all live. And so there's so much more I could say
No,
about it, but
no, and
that's
that
really where it came from for me. That's where it all began many,
yeah.
many years ago. Yeah.
And there was you kind of just said half of it. This quote that just like totally stood out to me from the podcast that I heard with you and Kate. That's like, if we're not standing on our ancestors' shoulders, we're carrying them on our backs. And
That's
then
it.
it's like that weight. There's that heaviness almost to it, and it's like the flip
Mm-hmm.
side of that is that like you can leverage the support of that to just go. And you're not the only person I've heard say that. And so I love when I hear things from multiple sources,
Yeah.
because to me it's an indication of like, oh, because first of all, it plucks a chord in me of meaning, right? And that's just a nice thing to recognize in the first place. And frankly, that's why I think we're here having this conversation today. That's why I reached out to you and was like, would you be willing to, come share a little
Yeah.
bit of what you're doing? Um,
And your retreat, the three things in your retreat.
mhm. Values, purpose, and vision.
So if you're carrying on your back
Hmm.
old resentments, karmas, grief, pain, it's going to be a lot harder to move through and expand those three things. So maybe it's super important to liberate and
Mm.
stand on the shoulders of the ancestors, which is just liberating your own energy. You might not even know that you're carrying that until it's not there. And then you go, I never even could imagine I could have this much potential.
Yeah.
And not just have the potential, but to circle back around, I couldn't even imagine I could feel this content
Mm.
with myself and my dharma, my mission.
Right, right,
I don't have the angst. I don't have the the non-confidence. Everything changes energetically and liberates when
right.
you're not carrying that on your back.
Yeah, yeah. And this whole idea of, everything changes, to me, I'm really interested in this delineation between the context and the content, right?
Mm,
So what's going on in the world, and then also my relationship to it, or the way that I'm looking at it or perceiving it. And it might not be that circumstantially things are necessarily changing, but like my relationship to those things. So the things
exactly.
that were once super hard, super difficult, super triggering might actually kind of turn into like, well, they can be recontextualized, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
And basically, I don't know if you use with your students or potential students, the term prana, but
Mm,
basically it just liberates the prana to move. It liberates you can breathe again. You
yeah.
didn't know you weren't fully breathing. And then you let go, and then you put it all in context, and you're like, whoa,
Oh yeah.
and energy moves. When energy moves, you're not so tired and you're not apathetic, and it's like, wow, let's go.
Yeah.
Because somewhere inside of every single person, we know what we're supposed to be doing on this journey. you know, we already know it. We just have to like get rid of the crud that keeps us small. You know,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, for anyone who is not familiar with prana, I'm just thinking even of like we've all had those moments where our nose is so stuffed up that we can't breathe through it. And it's, we just want to get
right?
the air in. And so we have to breathe through our mouth or whatever the thing is. But like when it finally does clear, whether we've used a neti
Mm,
pot or antihistamine or whatever, it's like it can flow,
yeah.
and that actually manifests on multiple layers or levels of our experience, whether it's psychosomatically,
hmm
spiritually. This stuff wants to flow, it wants to move, and when the block.
Life is the flow of prana. That's the
Mhm.
one of the most important Ayurvedic sutras. Period. You just know that, and you know it all. You know everything about Ayurveda. Life is the flow of prana.
That's awesome.
Prana flows, you're living. Now that's living. You know how you're like, yeah,
That's
so life is the flow of prana.
cool. Cool.
And that's what we're doing. We're liberating prana. So, this work, it encourages stability, it encourages a calmness,
Mm.
that arises. It encourages faith and understanding and expansion of who we really are and what's really possible.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. Do you want to
Do
hear the
you-
last one?
I was gonna say you haven't hit us with number 4 yet. Let's do that,
Number
and we
four.
can, we can
Well,
wrap up.
not everybody has number four,
Okay.
but number four is if you have a guru.
Mm.
So if you have a guru, then you have another whole expanded family, of other like-minded or other spiritualists or spiritual seekers, and then that becomes, another whole nother dimension of, you might like it happened for me actually. I was just moved very much. A colleague of mine in my community, young yoga teacher, died of breast cancer like a year ago, I think it was. And I mean, she was a colleague, but I didn't know her so well, but she was just a colleague in my community. And I was so driven from the inside to be like, she was a fellow yogini, like I really want to do an ancestral ritual for her. I want to do something for her with everybody. It's so important. I want to support her moving through, and I did, and it was beautiful. And it was like I just had to do it, and it's
Mhm.
like that. It's like people that that are doing the same work, that you're doing transformational work, and that, yeah, in the same lineage, but also in the same community. So like your community members, think about how many community members, you know, you, um, you enjoy being with and you've learned from and you have a commitment to in some way. If one of them passed on, you want to be thinking of them in a good light and supporting them moving through the ethers. Yeah.
That's beautiful, because and I know we're sort of, it does feel like the cultural norm now is to not really have a guru, or I don't know if it's a thing of the past, but like
Mm,
it definitely, like, one of the beautiful things to me about it is that the lineage is so
yeah.
present in the line, and it's not just, it's a
Yeah.
lineage of wisdom and light that's been passed down through these teachers. And
Yes.
I mean, I don't, I've never taken a formal guru, but there certainly have been people in my life who have dispelled the darkness with the light of their wisdom,
Exactly.
through their teachers, right? And it
Yeah.
passed down to me. And so even just the idea of lineage feels a little bit ancestral too.
Absolutely. Like even just think of Yoga Healer,
Yeah.
and how much we love, that whole lineage and, the people and, you know, we'd be there for them, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's
Not
some
everybody has it, but you can have it. It's almost like the little communities that we're all creating too,
totally.
that our communities are like a lineage. Yeah.
Well, and hey, for anyone who's listening, whether live or checking out this recording, it's one of the things that happens on retreats. You kind of build a little microcosm of a community and a
Hmm.
little family of those people that you're working with for that, like, that weekend. And so I'm super excited to be offering this. I'm super excited to host Sarita to give us this amazing ancestral healing workshop. And yeah, I just, if you have any questions about the retreat, any questions about what you heard today, feel free to throw your comments into the Facebook chat or shoot me an email, heff.patrick@gmail.com. I'm thinking, before we kind of wrap this up and I say my final spiel, is there anything else that's like surfacing in your mind that you wanted to bring into this conversation, Sarita?
Um, Just, I would say that the way to think about ancestral healing would be that we are always trying to reduce any baggage. It's like dissolving baggage, influence. We want to resolve. It's always about resolution and reducing the influence that all this worldly stuff might linger and have in our blood and in our being and in our energy field and in our microbiome and in our digestion and in our anything that's interrupting
Yeah.
all of us, the complete us, is what this is about. It's acknowledging we want the flow to be so free. It's all about freedom of flow.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. Thanks for coming on and doing this with me, because
This was so much fun.
it's
I
getting
love
me
this
really
topic.
excited about the about the
I know.
retreat. So I guess I have a handful of spots left for this retreat. For anybody who's listening or catching the recording, I did create a special coupon, all caps, Ancestral Healing. So you head over to yogawithpatrick.com/retreat. So yogawithpatrick.com/retreat. Use the coupon code Ancestral Healing. You'll get a nice little discount. And yeah, I want to say thank you. Deep bow of
It's going to
gratitude.
be a deep conversation. I'm telling you, it's
It's going to
essential.
be
It's the soil.
It's the soil. You said that right, but maybe that's what we can end on. You said that right before we jumped on this live stream. I was like, what is ancestral healing? And you basically were
I'm
like,
like,
soil that everything else grows from.
it's the soil.
Cool, cool.
Yeah, gratitude
Valuable
and
takeaways.
more. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. We'll
Thanks,
see you all
Patrick.
later. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.